Okay, Assalamu alaikum everybody. Welcome to our lab number 3. Lab number 3 is about Iterator and iterable interfaces. Okay, we have titled it More on Linked List, but actually it is about these two interfaces that we have discussed in the last lecture. Now, in terms of examples, we have actually gone through almost all of them in detail in the lecture itself. You saw how we updated the DLL class to make it to be iterable. Okay, so you do that by saying DLL class DLL of generic type T, you will say implement iterable. Now, to implement the iterable interface, of course, we have to implement the method of the interface. And the method of the iterable interface is the iterator method. So, where is the iterator method? As we saw in the class, this is the iterator method. But look at what the method is returning. It is returning an object of type DLL iterator, basically a class that implements the iterator interface. And this is the DLL iterator as we explained in detail in the class. So basically what I'm trying to say is to implement iterable, actually you must implement the iterator in a class that is an inner class within your data structure. So we must implement iterator first as an inner class, then we can implement the iterable. Okay, because to implement the iterable, we need to return an object of a class that implements the iterator. Yeah, I hope this point is very clear. So basically, this is what this is saying. The class DLL has been updated to implement the iterable interface. Study it carefully to understand the implementation. I believe we studied it in detail in the class. Now, we also actually studied the test integer DLL, the one that uses the DLL. Remember, the whole idea of having iterable is to be able to traverse the list from outside the list itself. So from outside the DLL class, we should be able to go through the elements of the DLL. And that is precisely what we were trying to do in the test integer DLL by defining two sums methods, sum1 and sum2. Okay, each of them is traversing the elements in the DLL object, DLL of integer in this case, trying to find the sum of the elements. But the first method, sum1, is trying to do it using the iterator directly, whereas sum2 is trying to do it using the for each. Again, as we have clearly explained, for each is really using the iterator behind the scene. And we're going to prove that in this lab, that actually the for each relies on the iterator. Okay, you will see what I mean later when we go to the tasks. So I don't have much to add in terms of the test integer DLL. It is exactly as we saw in the lecture. We have these two sums methods. This one uses iterator so first it has to ask the list to give it its iterator, and then we know how to process the data structure using the iterator by using a while loop, by calling the two methods of the iterator, has next and next. So while iterator has next, iterator.next, this will give you the next element, add it to the sum, and so on. Whereas sum2 here simply uses for each. So for each int n in the list, okay, see here the type of the variable you define here depends on the content of your list. So our list is of type integer. So we have to define a variable of type int. If you wish, you can say integer. Actually, there are synonyms within the Java. Either you say integer or you say int. Okay. So, and we tested this methods and they were working fine. So there is nothing to add as far as this example is concerned. But there is one more example. Example number 3. Test item DLL. So again, we are trying to use the iterator to go through the elements of our linked list, W linked list. The only thing here is the items inside the list are not integer values, or rather the objects inside the list, they are not integer values, they are item objects. Okay, so let us see what this class is going to do. It's basically going to print all the items in the list that their price is greater than a given limit. Okay, so suppose you say your limit is 5 reals and you say print all items greater than 5 reals. So that's what the method will do. Let us look at the program. Test item DLL. Okay, so it's very similar to test item that we saw before, except that we are now adding one more option. Okay, we saw all these options before: add to head, add to tail, print all, and so on. But now we want to print all items whose price is more than a given limit. So for that we need a method, and that method will either use iterator directly, or it will use the for each statement. Okay, actually we have both. Let's go down and see the methods. So I have a method here, print greater than, public static void print greater than. Okay, the method is going to receive two arguments. One is the limit after which we can print the item. I mean, if the price is greater than this limit, we will print the item. Otherwise, we don't. And then, of course, we need to receive the list itself. List of what? Item. Okay, so we receive list of item and then a certain limit. And we want to traverse the element in the list. Each one we will check its price. Is it greater than this limit? If yes, print it. Otherwise, don't print it. Okay, so how do we do this? We have two options. The easier way, which is using for each. So we can say for each. Now again, please notice, what is the type of the list? Is the content of the list is item. So when you are defining your variable for each, it has to be of the same type. Okay, remember for the other example, the content was integer, and therefore we say for each int n. This time the content is item, so we're gonna say for each item. You don't have to call this variable item, you can use any name you want, but the type here has to be item. Okay, so for each item in the list, check. So we need an if statement. Okay, now I need to explain actually what goes on here. What does it mean for each item in the list, or how is it going to work? What will happen actually is that the Java system is going to call the iterator behind the scene. Okay, and it will be calling the next method several times as long as there are more elements. While iterator has next, it will get the next element and assign it to this variable. Okay, then you will do the process. Once you come back to the for loop, it will again go and ask the iterator to give it the next element. That next element will be assigned to item, and then we process it like that. So really this for each relies on the iterator. Okay, as I said, I will show you the proof in this lab. Okay, so assuming we got an item, what do? We're going to check its price. So you're going to say if item.price is greater than limit, then print the item. Okay, and then go and get the next item, because here we say for each item in the list. So we're going to be getting the items one by one, and for each one we will check if its price is greater than limit, we print it. Okay, this is easy enough. So this is one way of doing it, using for each. This is another way of doing it, using the iterator directly. So here you have to ask the list to give you its iterator. So you say list.iterator. It is going to give you an iterator. You have to save it in a variable of type iterator. But iterator of what generic type or what specific type? The content of the list. The list contains item. So it has to be iterator of item, it, equal to list.iterator. Okay, so once you have the iterator, we use it in the standard way. You always need a while loop. Okay, so while it has next, it.next to get the next item, right? Now we need to save that item in a variable, so that's why we are defining this variable here, item. Okay, so item will be received from the next method and it will be saved in this variable. So again, like we did here, you only need to check what is the price of that item. Is it greater than limit? If it is, print the item. These two methods will work exactly the same. Let's test it, starting with the first method. Okay, print greater than. Okay, so here you see in case 8 we are asking the user enter the limit price to print greater than 8. Okay, so we read the value from the user, and then we call the method print greater than marks list. Okay, so we ask the user to enter the limit. He will enter the limit. We're going to read the limit as reader.next double, save it in a variable marks. You see that somewhere above we have defined a variable marks in addition to the price. Okay, so now we just call the method. We have the two input that we need. We need the marks and also we need the list. Well, the list has been created. It has been populated with the values using either add to head or add to tail. Just pass those two arguments to the method and it will do the printing for you. Okay, let us test it. As usual, you should run actually from here by saying run file. Okay, let us add some items. So option 1, maybe to add an item, let's use the same examples that we did in the class. Let's say pencil is the name, price is 2 reals. Okay, again this time let's use add to tail. Pen is the name, price is 5 reals, and again add to tell, this time eraser is the name, and price is 3 reals. Okay, let's add one more so that our output will have at least more than one element. Let's say we're gonna buy a ruler, so option 1, the name is ruler, and the price is 7 reals. Okay, so now if you print the elements, you see that we have 4 elements: ruler of price 7, pencil price 2, pen 5, and eraser 3. Now suppose you want to print all the elements that are greater than 3 reals. We should expect to see only ruler and pen. Okay, so let's try that. Option 8. It says enter the limit price to print greater than 8. So I want to print all items whose price is greater than 3 reals. If you press enter, you'll see the output. So it's printed ruler because what? Its price is bigger than 3 reals. And similarly for pen. So this is the idea. This is using the for each. If you go and change the method name, in case 8 here, change it to method number 2, you will see the same output. Both these two methods behave exactly the same way. Okay, so at least you have now seen 2 examples where we use the iterator or for each, and therefore we can now go and explain the tasks that you are supposed to do. So let's start with task 1. Task 1 says update the test integer DLL to include a method that uses either iterator or for each loop. Okay, so you always have this option. Even in exam, I normally give you the options. Either you use the iterator directly or you use the for each. It's up to you. But you have to know how to use at least one of them. Okay, so you are to use one of these to write a method that will print all the odd numbers in the list. Remember, we're talking about list of integers. So we want to print all the odd numbers that are inside the list. Okay, this is the signature of the method. Okay, it's void, it's only printing, so no need for any return type, and it is called print odds, and it's going to receive the list as a parameter, just like the sum. Okay, yeah, but the sum was not void, it was returning a value. Okay, so the idea is you need to go through the elements in this list, and for each one you will check, is it odd? If it is odd, print it. Okay, otherwise just ignore it, go and get the next one, and if it is odd, print it. This is the idea. I think it's simple enough. Okay, so this is task 1. It is to be done inside the test integer DLL, just after the sum methods. Okay, you can come here and write the print odds. Okay, this is task number 1. Task number 2 is related to the test item DLL. Okay, so update that class to include the following method, and the method is public static double, so the method is not void, total cost. Okay, this is the name of the method, and the method is going to receive 3 arguments this time: item name, item quantity, and the list of items. Okay, what is this method gonna do? it is going to use either iterator directly or for each loop to locate a given item. So you are given name of a certain item, you have to locate that item in the list. Okay, so you're going to search until you find an item whose name matches this given name. Okay, then it will compute and return the total cost given the quantity purchased. So the idea here is a customer comes to your shop and he bought certain quantity of a certain item. For example, he buys 10 pencils. Okay, we want to know what is the total cost of these 10 pencils. Okay, we already know the quantity, but we don't know the price. To know the price, you have to locate the item. So you have to go through the list, you have to traverse it, either using for each or using the iterator directly, until you find an item whose name matches this one. Once you get that item, you can know its price. Okay, so if you know the price, just multiply it with the quantity and that will give you the total cost. I hope it's clear. So the idea is the customer buys a given quantity of a certain item. What is the total cost? To know the total cost, we have to know the price. So actually this traversal you are doing is to try and locate the item, because once you can locate the item, you can say dot price to get the price, right? So once you get the price, just multiply by the quantity to get the total cost and return it. Okay, this is the idea. Test your method by adding an option to test item DLL. So the option will ask the user what is the name of the item and also what is the quantity. And then you will tell him, okay, the total cost is this much. Okay, this is task 2. Task 3. Task 3 is similar but is related to students. Remember, I told you we shall continue to use the student class throughout the lab sessions. So here is another task related to the student class. So like we did in the last lab, you have to copy the student class to this lab. You also probably need to copy the test student DLL, because actually this is the class we're going to update. So we need both the test student DLL and the student class to be included in this lab 3 project. Now what we want to do is to add a method called print good students. Print good students. So print good student is going to receive the list of students. You can see here is DLL of student, but it's going to print only those students whose GPA is greater than 2.0. Okay, so you have to traverse the list either using iterator or using for each, and for each student in the list you just need to check what is the GPA. Is it greater than 2.0? If yes, print the student. Okay, so this is task number 3. You can see that task 1, 2 and 3, they are all related to using the iterator. Okay, what about implementing the iterator? Because this is one of the main objectives, to learn how to implement an iterator and also how to use it. So far we have seen 3 tasks that allow us to use an iterator to traverse a list from another class. So let's see task 4. Task 4 actually is about implementation. It says write an inner class DLL reverse iterator inside the DLL class, very similar to DLL iterator class, but this class will iterate through the list in reverse order. Okay, so basically what we are saying here is, if you look at the DLL class, we have this class that implements iterator, but it is iterating the elements in a forward manner, because you can see it initialize temp to head, and when you say next, it will give you temp.info and move temp to the next. If you say next again, it will give you temp.info and move temp to the next. So this is iterating through the elements in a forward manner. We want a similar class that will iterate through the elements, but this time in reverse manner. So that's why the name of the class is DLL reverse iterator. Okay, so you can just copy and paste this class and modify it. Obviously, I'm sure you will guess, you have to initialize your temp to tell. Okay, so that you start from the other side, and when you return the current element, you have to move temp to the prev. Okay, basically that's all you have to do. Okay, so you will have another class that implements iterator. Now let's read on. Update the iterator method to return an object of this class instead of an object of this class. Obviously, in the same class, we can only have one iterator method, and we cannot have two iterator methods. Okay, so we want you to update this iterator method so that instead of returning object of this DLL iterator, it will return an object of DLL reverse iterator. Okay, good. Now once you do that, you're going to see something very interesting, because as I told you earlier, we're going to prove to you that actually for each relies on the iterator. To test your new iterator, run, let's say, task 1. Okay, run test integer DLL without making any change. Okay, and you will see something surprising, because if you call print odds, you will see the same odd numbers are printed as before, only that this time they will be printed in reverse order. And what I'm saying is, suppose for example you add these elements in the list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Suppose these are the elements in the list. Okay, before doing task 4, if you test this print odd methods, it's going to print the odd numbers in this order: 1, 3, 5, 7. Okay, now after you do task 4, see, task 4 doesn't involve any change to this class. You are only updating the DLL class. You don't change anything in the test integer DLL. Okay, now if you run this test class again and call the print odd method, you will see that the elements are printed like this: 7, 5, 3, and 1. And this is the same even if when you are implementing your print odds, you use for each. You didn't use iterator, you use for each. Okay, so when you are doing task 1, let's say you implemented this print odd method using for each. So initially it was printing the elements 1, 3, 5, 7. But now after changing the iterator, if you run the same method, it will print the elements in reverse order. 7536. So what does this prove? This proves that actually the for each is calling the iterator method to get the values. It's not doing it by itself. Okay, so this is the proof I was talking to you earlier, that we're going to prove that the iterator, rather the for each, actually relies on the iterator. Okay, so if you are able to do this, then I'm sure you will have gotten the hang of iterator and iterable. This will be the end of the task. Okay, and this is the end of my explanation of the lab. Thank you very much.